Welcome to the Pocket. I am your host, Scooter, and here for you guys today. We got our AFC South offseason overview, and I just got one question for you guys. Did you miss me? Did you miss me? That's right. We're coming out with all four of these in one day. You might say, "You're crazy, Scooter." Guess what? You can't stop me. Just try and stop me. Okay. Now, fortunately, this is definitely one of the easier ones. A lot of these decisions are a lot more straightforward. These teams are in very clear situations, all except for the Texans. They haven't done too well. So, before we get into it, don't forget to drop a like on the video to support the channel. Subscribe if you don't want to miss the rest of the divisions, and you can catch up with all the other off-season content I've made so far. And let's get right into it, starting off by breaking down this offseason or this standings for the AFC South this year. The Texans finished at 10-7. They finished pretty rough down the stretch, but they did manage to get into the playoffs and actually kind of settle in, defeating the Chargers before they went on to lose to the Chiefs. The Colts, they were looking like they were going to compete for the 7 seed until they ran into the beastly New York Giants and Malik Neighbors week 17, although that was really not the best game for the Giants to win. It really exposed their biggest need, which we will get into when we get there. The Jaguars, horrible season, 4-13. Everyone thought, at least, another maybe 500, close to 500 season from Trevor Lawrence, another year of development. No, it all fell apart. He got banged up again, and the team's just not where it needs to be. And then the Titans, just even worse. But maybe not so much because they don't have a franchise quarterback. They're just kind of rolling the dice with Will Levis. So they're going to finish with, I guess we'll move right into the draft picks now, with the number 1 overall pick. So fortunately for them, they're going to have the greatest opportunity this year to address their poor situation. The Jaguars, not too far behind at pick 5. And then after the Jaguars, you have the Texans at all the way down at 25. And where is the Colts? 14. So pretty bad division, kind of similar to the AFC East, where you got the Bills who made it deep into the playoffs, and then all the rest of the teams are picking in the the top 18, the non-playoff teams. So, like I said, a lot of these decisions are going to be pretty straightforward, and we're just going to start things off with the Texans, considering they are kind of in their own category in this division. You can see their needs are listed as interior offensive line, defensive tackle, wide receiver, safety, and tight end. I'm not so sure about tight end. Dalton Schultz is not too bad there. They do have the 25th pick in the draft, but cap space, they really don't have too much to work with. For me, the biggest need for them is going to be offensive line. You could argue they have sneaky needs at wide receiver. Look at what happened when Tank Dell, Diggs, and Nico Collins all went down, but I would argue that's a bit of an outlier. I know Tank Dell won't be 100% coming back, but they do have some depth guys who didn't look all that bad. When Nico and Diggs and Dell were out. So I think they can get by at wide receiver as long as they improve the offensive line, because it's also going to improve the run game, because that's another thing I want you guys to remember. This run game in the beginning of the season with Joe Mixon was absolutely cooking, and that's something you need to set up these deep shots that they really like to run in this offense. So they need to address the offensive line. I know I sound like a broken record here, but it's really something you could say about 80% of the teams in the NFL. You can always get better at offensive line, and it's a sure bet to improve your team on all facets. And right, like you can have improvements that in totality don't help you too much. Offensive line is almost never one of those. So with that being said, at pick 25, they're in a decent spot. There will be guys available there for them, and they might be faced with some tough choices. Receivers falling in the draft. Guys like Matthew Golden might be down there. Emeka Egbuka went to college with C.J. Stroud, so a lot of people are saying to reunite those two. But I'm going to stand firm and say they need to fix this offensive line and have them select Greg Zabel out of North Dakota State. He is a tackle, but with the versatility and amount of shuffling around of offensive linemen that's going on nowadays, I think taking the best guy that is available is never too bad of an idea. You could go Tyler Booker, but at the end of the day, I'm going to have them go Greg Zabel, and just, improve the offensive line. This is something we saw kill them down the stretch against teams like the Chiefs. They did it to them twice in that Chargers game. It wasn't looking like they were going to win early on because the offensive line wasn't protecting CJ Stroud, and they couldn't get anything going on offense. It took an improv play from him, CJ Stroud, scrambling outside of the pocket to break that game open for them. So improve this offensive line, increase the steady floor of this team, and keep the boat churning. That's all the Texans need to do. Up next, we have the Indianapolis Colts. And for them, like I said, they're in a different situation from the Texans, although not as bad as the Jaguars and Titans, but they've got some work to do. They're building around young quarterback Anthony Richardson. He is probably looking like the new Jameis Winston right now, except even more so. It's like he only completes a few passes a game, but if he does, it's like a 60-yard bomb through air yards too, and it's for a touchdown. So very interesting to see what's going on there. But I think you just kind of accept it for it being what it is. He was a raw prospect. He's young, so give him time to develop. But there's other holes on this team. A lot of them on the defensive side. A lot of people looking at tight ends saying they need to get Tyler Warren. Well, I think they might be too low for that, and I don't really think trading up is the move for them right now, considering they do have other needs. And I mentioned in the beginning of this video how Malik Neighbors exposed the Colts' biggest need for this offseason, tackling in the secondary specifically. Malik Neighbors went for 2 touchdowns against this Colts team, multiple deep catches down the field, and if he wasn't in that game, I don't think we beat the Colts. And if he didn't even make 1 or 2 of those plays, I don't think we get that far ahead, right? He took screens for touchdowns. This wasn't like a slant, right, where at least you have, no. He broke multiple tackles on that one play especially to get into the end zone. And this is something we saw all year from the Colts, not being able to tackle, letting up big plays. Like one minute their defense looks pretty good, and then the next minute they let up a 60-yard touchdown, and you're just wondering what the hell just happened. So they need to improve specifically tackling in the secondary and their secondary in general. So looking at where they are in the draft at 14, there's a couple interesting guys that could be here. No safeties taken left, so you could go Malachi Starks or Nick Emenwari. But based off of draft value, we know that you can sort of wait on safeties, kind of like running back and linebacker, and maybe try to trade up into the bottom of the first round and get a guy who's fallen, or trade up into the top of the second round ahead of some other teams who have the same idea as you. So that would leave us to prioritize corner. The 2 top guys are still on the board, Will Johnson and Jahdae Barron, but I'm going to go with Will Johnson because of the size. We need a tackler in this defense. We've got smaller guys who can cover at a decent rate. We need some guys who are going to be able to tackle big number 1 wide receivers, tight ends, running backs who are getting out into space. Will Johnson out of Michigan, he's going to be able to do that. 6'2", almost 200 pounds. He was a little banged up last year, so a lot of people are saying he looks really, really slow. I'd like to give him a chance and say he's going to get more athletic, focusing on his NFL career instead of being a college athlete. Obviously, very decorated, going to Michigan, winning the national championship before with McCarthy. So, he's a guy who's been there in the big moments and, played in the, good conference. And I think if you're still worried about safety, you can hope to sign a guy in free agency. It would have to happen before this because he's going to be highly demanded. Trayvon Moehrig. I hope I said that right. He's a really, really good tackling safety. He's all right in coverage. He makes his plays, but if what you're looking for is a tackling safety, he's your guy, and he's the best guy in the market to do it. So, yep, that's my answer for the Colts. Get some tackling DBs, sign Trayvon Moehrig, and then draft Will Johnson, corner out of Michigan. Up next, we're going to talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars. They were in contention for the number 1 overall pick for most of the year until they finally won a few games against the Titans and managed to give it up to them. Ultimately, that's going to seem pretty costly, whether you needed a quarterback or not, but let's talk about the Jags. Their needs are going to be mostly on the defensive side, interior offensive line. They just kind of need more weapons on offense. They have Brian Thomas Jr., but they just released Evan Ingram. ETN had a down year. Tank Bigsby looks pretty good, though, so I'd say, you're kind of set at running back. So let's focus on what they're going to do here. For me, their biggest need is going to be defense. The defense was not good last year. I get the offense had its issues too, but I think they can find answers in different ways. Other than this pick right here, they signed Eric Armstead, but he was really, really disappointing. Not really, the pure defensive tackle that they needed. A bit more of a pass rushing specialist kind of guy. They will have amazing options here with their draft pick. Looking at who I have available to them, you got guys like Mason Graham, Ted McMillan, Ashton Genty, Tyler Warren, Luther Burden, James Pierce Jr., Will Campbell, ton of guys at every position, so you really can't miss. So what are you going to do here? not only do I think they just need defense, but overall they do just need to get better. Obviously, you're a 4-win team. I get they had quarterback injuries they had to deal with, but this is a team that just needs to get better. You need an injection of strong talent that's going to stay there for a long time. So take the blue chip prospect Mason Graham, defensive tackle out of Michigan, pair him up with Eric Armstead on the inside. That duo is set now. And then you also have Trayvon Walker and Josh Hines Allen on the edge. We've been talking for years about this Jaguars defensive front like it was supposed to be this monstrous unit. We said it last year with Armstead and then the edge rushing duo, but they were missing that inside piece, that really strong, sturdy nose. And Mason Graham certainly can do more than that, but he can be that for you if that's what you need. So I think establishing this strong defensive front is a great, foundation for improving this Jaguars team. Obviously, they need answers on offense. They need a wide receiver too. They're going to need a tight end. I think this is too high for Tyler Warren. I mean, maybe you could justify it if you really wanted to focus on offense. Ashton Genty, no, you already have ETN and Bigsby. So I think draft Mason Graham out of Michigan. I've heard people say Tet McMillan. I understand, pairing him with Brian Thomas Jr. sounds like a good idea. Liam Cohen certainly made the most of his guys in Tampa Bay with Baker Mayfield, Godwin, and Evans, and even Jalen McMillan down the stretch. But hey, McMillan. But yeah, I think they can find answers for the offensive stuff later on, and you don't really want to pass up on a blue chip guy like this, especially when you just haven't been able to get the defense right. So that's my answer for the Jaguars. Add talent to the defense. Take the blue chip prospect who is still there, Mason Graham. And finally, our last team, we have the Tennessee Titans, and they have the number 1 overall pick. They have a decent amount of cap space, over $50 million. They got needs all over the place. Quarterback, they desperately need wide receiver, interior offensive line, edge rushers, safety. Man, I mean, I know tackle is technically more important than interior offensive line, but that is just about the 4 most important positions in football right there: quarterback, wide receiver, line, and edge. Like, oh my God, this team needs just everything. And then when you throw a quarterback, like I said, on top of it, it's just like, well, you would really like to use this pick on one of those other positions, but you kind of got to go for quarterback. Normally you'd be pumped to have the number 1 overall pick, but everyone's down on this class. So one thing I will start off by saying is I don't think there's any issue of trading down. If the Giants wanted to move up, I would take that call and I would move out of that spot if I could. I don't like being too close to the top because I view it as like the best thing you can do this year is trade down, especially if you're just kind of banking against the quarterbacks. Then let them get taken higher up. The better players will push down. You still get a guy you're happy with, and then you gain some draft capital as well. So I will start off by saying that. However, it's just so tough, with this class being as risky as it is. I have assumed, saying that other teams should stay away from quarterback, that Cam Ward does go first overall to the Titans here. And I actually do think it is the good move. You could say it's reaching a little bit, but he's certainly going to be far better than Will Levis. He does have good pocket feel, so even if the interior rush is getting through that bad offensive line, he's still going to be able to manage to maybe protect himself or just get the ball away, kind of limit the negative plays that could happen in an offense like that. Unlike Will Levis, who will try to score a touchdown even if he's getting sacked and then it gets taken the other way for a defensive touchdown. So my thing is with Cam Ward, comparing him to Shedeur Sanders, I do think he has more physical talent than Shedeur Sanders. And of course, there's no replacement for mental, knowledge and ability to process defenses and stuff like that. And, you could really argue, who's better at that. It gets really hard to take a stance on that because there are so many different variables, like the team that they're on, the conference, right? What competition are they playing? What type of offense are they running? Oh, are they just throwing screens? So that part gets a little bit more difficult. I think things just get kind of simple when you look at a prospect and you just say, okay, does he have the talent, right? We had our interviews with him. Do we believe he can be coached up into our system and succeed for us, lead our organization and franchise? Seems like Cam Ward has been fitting the bill for those categories, and other teams are going to want Cam Ward if he falls out of this one spot. people are going to say, oh, he would have been like the third quarterback taken, second quarterback taken in other classes. Well, beggars really can't be choosers. And like I said, this isn't Shedeur Sanders here. This is Cam Ward. So if he's got the upside, I think he's worth the risk. And you can also not stop there, right? If you know you're going to take Cam Ward, you really should invest into the offense to allow at least him to be comfortable. If your defense is losing you games, that's okay. It's not going to be good for the confidence of the team, but at least you're not ruining the individual confidence of the quarterback. So I think attacking wide receiver in free agency, if a guy like Godwin does become available, that might not be a bad idea. He's kind of a safety blanket. It's a shame that there's not like a true number one wide receiver alpha who's younger. Diami Brown is the closest to that, and he's definitely not a true alpha. But there's some older veteran guys too, like Amari Cooper, that they can consider. But overall, outside of supporting the offense with the cap space that they do have, I think that they need to use the number one overall pick on Cam Ward. Alrighty, guys, that was a much quicker one, a lot more simple. AFC South. I think we know who these teams are. We know what they need to do. It's not all that complicated. So thank you guys for watching. Tell me in the comments what you think about my suggestions. Definitely a lot of discourse about the Texans. Do you think the Colts should go best corner or best safety available? For the Jaguars, let's just assume everyone's at their disposal who's not a top 3 pick. Who would you pick? Mason Graham, Ashton Genty, Tyler Warren? Tell me in the comments. And if you don't want to miss more of my content, please subscribe so you don't miss any of it. I promise you won't regret it. I've been putting out content very consistently. I've been coming through with my promises, and here I am finishing 4 videos by the end of the day, just so you have them before free agency negotiations start. So once again, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.